Welcome back to Just Jossin. We are wrapping up season 2. So we are going on an emotional journey and we are going to guide you there. I am part of your guides. I'm Sabrina Hannon.
And I'm Jasmine Heron, the other, spirit guide, the mountain lion.
We'll get you through it.
So we're talking today about Becoming Part 1 and Becoming Part 2. Now, both of these were written and directed by our man Joss himself. So this was his baby. And
makes sense. I mean, it's the finale of the season. And also we're going to have all of the feelings throughout this. All of the feelings.
He loves making us feel emotions. Painful emotions.
Most people don't know this. He's actually a sadist.
Mm-hmm. An emotional sadist.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to make you love someone, and then I'm going to take them horribly from you. Mm-hmm. Like Tara.
Yeah.
I'm going to have full spoilers, but if he makes you love someone, he will rip them from you.
Prepare to be on your side crying if you fall in love with a character at some point.
Mm-hmm.
But, and for me, part 1 isn't, so part 1 is a little rough, right? Over time, it hasn't, after watching this for, 20 some years now, part 1 doesn't get me as much as part 2.
Yeah.
I know it's coming in part 1. I steel myself for it. I know it's okay.
Yep.
Part 2, however, So let's rip off that Band-Aid.
So we start with a voiceover.
Yeah.
A half-demon named Whistler.
Who is totally Doyle later on.
Yep.
That's where the idea for Doyle was at. Maybe they're friends. Who knows?
The emissary from the PTB, basically. Mm-hmm. And he's talking about turning points in your life with this lovely, voiceover, taking us to Ireland with Liam, who is the man who's becoming jealous.
In 1753.
1753, yep. And so we have Liam, who is all drunken and living off his daddy's money, and he's gonna go steal from his father to go get more money for more booze, and he sees a beautiful woman walking down an alleyway, and he follows her, and it's Darla. So he
basically uses the line of "What's a nice girl doing in a place like this?"
Yeah.
That is, he says it more eloquently, but that's what he says.
What is a woman of your stature?
In an alleyway known for what this alleyway is known for. Well, I'm luring you here so I can kill you.
And Julie Benz is definitely more deeper and soulful, and not the way that she was depicted as Darla in the first couple of episodes in season 1. We are now seeing the powerful Darla.
The fun Darla. Fun. Yeah, and this is actually the first time we see a siring happen on screen.
Mm-hmm.
So we're losing that virginity right there.
Yep. And so, and I've got questions about vampire blood. Is vampire blood tasty? Because someone's just bit your neck, right? And then shoves your face in a thing of blood. My instinct is not going to be, nom nom, let me lap that up. She shoves him into her bosom, and he just full on starts motorboat suckling her. Mm-hmm. And so my question is there some kind of addictive, tasty,
maybe it smells differently to humans, like enticing.
Uh-huh.
Um, my favorite though vampire turning siren thing though is definitely Spike, where he just goes, "Ow, ow, ow," because that is the appropriate response. Ow!
You're two hickeys. No, this is a hickey. Like,
Like I've gotten shots before, not in the neck, but I've gotten shots before. I imagine that being bitten by a vampire is 2 shots in your neck. But I digress.
yeah, but again, like, so we see the siren, we see him like full on face and bosom, like not quite a motorboat, but he's definitely enjoying it down there.
Which I mean fits with his personality as a human.
And that was a lovely corset doing wonders for her figure. And of course, since vampires don't breathe, they can wear corsets like that.
Yeah, the not breathing thing, when we get into part 2 and vampires not breathing, I have so many questions. But
I might have written notes on those questions, so we'll find
out. So once we pop out of Ireland, we are back in present day Sunnydale. So what, 1998?
Yep.
Yeah. And Buffy's like, yeah, yeah, getting all the vamps. And
Yep.
Angel is being his creepy self, just watching, stalking her, smiling, having a good time. Because he's been turning vamps left and right, just sending them her way, basically keeping her busy.
And Buffy's like, send a message to Angel. And then she stakes the guy. And then she pulls out poor Xander from behind a gravestone where he's been knocked, not quite unconscious, but, you know, knocked around pretty heftily. And they talk about the fact that finals are coming up. And he was like, maybe I wish I was dead. Like,
yeah. And then they cut to Giles going to some museum, I guess. I'm guessing it's the same museum from that we see in Pangs. I think it may be that the same museum in Sunnydale or around Sunnydale.
That we saw from Inca Mummy Girl.
Yeah, it could be that one too. But they've unearthed this giant stone box that they don't realize is a box. And the guys contacted Giles, the curator, because Giles is the best authority on obscure relics, according to the Washington Institute. So very vague, the Washington Institute. Of what? Obscure relics?
Yep. Was it an obelisk? Is that, I don't even know if that's the definition of an obelisk. What they find, but the first thing is, you know, this big stone box, or like stone, I want to say like obelisk, like that just makes, you know.
Maybe. Stone box.
And he's like, have you opened it? And they're like, oh wait, we didn't realize it could open.
And then Giles is like, please don't open it for a bit. And he was like, oh, you don't want to be surprised? And Giles is like, no.
We live on a hellmouth. Like, how did you people not recognize hellmouth?
Yeah, not only that, like, you should probably be wearing, I'm assuming, a hazmat suit if you're opening something like that. You shouldn't just be like, I wonder what's in here.
I feel like
if you don't know where it's from,
but you're not
wear some sort of mask. Something.
So yes, mask. But I don't know if I would say hazmat suit, because I could be totally wrong. I'm not in the archaeological field. I feel like anything that you'd be really concerned about in terms of like bacteria would be long dead at this point.
So one of the problems that there are with the ice caps melting, and this is not an ice cap,
but because those are frozen, like the bacteria are coming back they've been frozen and now they're warming up again. But if
how far was this in the earth? Maybe it was partly frozen. At any rate, if you find something, put gloves and a mask on before you open it.
At the very least. I mean, even if you're doing renovations in your house, put gloves and a mask
Yeah.
on. So if you were opening up the unknown, archaic relics, gloves and a mask might be good.
Mm-hmm.
And so then we go back. Is this so? Wait, now we get the Xander fish finger.
Yep. Yeah, him reenacting with a toothpick and they're stick
two fish sticks.
Yeah.
Little fish sticks or fish fingers.
Yeah.
And he's using one as the Buffy and then one as the vampire, and he just gives a dramatic reenactment for Cordelia and Willow and
Oz.
Mm-hmm. And Willow sitting in Oz's lap, which is such a high school thing.
Mm-hmm. And Snyder prances on up and asks if there's a chair shortage. And Will's like, I didn't read anything. Oh, gotcha. You grumpy old man.
Yep. And Cordelia, really
yeah,
gets at him when he leaves. But Willow says that she is going to help Buffy study because she's really gotten into the teacher tutoring thing.
Yes.
And so then we flash back to a young Drusilla, a human Drusilla. And we learn that Drusilla was quite religious before turning into a vampire, and that she was worried because she was already having psychic visions as a human. Yes. So as a human, she was already showing precognitive abilities, like psychic abilities, and she was worried that it was an affront to God, which is why she was confessing every 2 days. And little does she know, Angelus has just killed the priest in the confessional. Mm-hmm. And that's how he kind of like picks up on her. He had noticed her before, we've seen in previous flashbacks, but this is him being like, ooh, let's go check out this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so this is London, 1860, and I'm assuming that her priest had been Irish and had that accent. Otherwise, she was not perceptive and did not give a darn about the priest, because an Irish accent is very different than a British accent, very different from a Scottish accent, and so on and so forth. But yeah, she's very concerned. And Angelus decides to start his torture, really, basically, of her by saying, well, you are an evil thing. You are of the devil, and there's nothing you can do about that. And she was like, but I don't want to be. I want to be good. And he was like, well, okay, here's your penance. Does that make you feel better? And she's like, oh, yes, yes. Yep.
And then we flash forward to present with Drusilla and all of her vampire glory, where she is much more in tune with herself. And she has eaten a man that does not agree with her. An old man, he got stuck in her teeth. Mm-hmm.
Basically night and day. And I think it does a really good job of showing that, because we haven't really seen at this point, I mean, even with Jesse, that once the demon takes over, you're gone, because that, very pious girl in that confessional is not in Drusilla currently. Like, the visions are the only thing that have stayed.
Yep. And she has revealed that there is something at the museum, and Angelus is like, oh, do you see all that in your head? And Spike's like, no, you ninny. She read it in the morning paper. And
also, I love the fact that Spike is reading the morning paper. Maybe that's why Spike and Angel hate each other so much. They're British and Irish, and it would have been in a time when those relations were not so good. But yeah, so he hands that over, and Angel's like, oh. And then we pop over to Buffy studying with Willow.
Mm-hmm.
And Willow has turned into quite the teacher.
Yeah.
Um, she gives Buffy a little pep talk, we'll call it, of, straighten out and don't waste my time. You're not a moron.
Yep.
And
And she
Buffy is
really, she really slams down on Buffy's negative self-talk, which I think is important to say, yes, like I'm struggling with something, but don't put yourself down. Don't say just because I don't understand something, I'm a moron or I'm an idiot. And Willow really, says, you have a lot on your plate, but you can apply yourself and you can learn this.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, out of all of them, Xander's the one that doesn't have all that stuff on his plate and he cannot grasp it. So
yeah, okay, so I find myself to be a very academic person. I was in, higher education, working in universities, and would oftentimes come across students who it was very self-defeatist. They would say, I just don't understand that. I just don't get it. So why even try? Instead of applying themselves to be like, this is a place or this is a part of my life that I'm struggling with, but I can figure it out. It is not outside my grasp. It's just difficult. And so I felt Willow. I felt Willow there. But Buffy drops a pencil and she goes and she picks it up, and you see her pick it up right next to the computer disk that Jenny Calendar dropped so many episodes ago. And she picks up the pencil and there's nothing. And then there's a pause. And she's like, deja vu. And she's like, I've felt this moment before. And so she recognizes the significance of the moment, lets it happen again, and she finds the computer disk. And they plug it in, and they see that it is the restoration spell for Angel.
Yeah, and Buffy actually realizes it before Willow, because Willow was just like, oh, is this probably? And Buffy's like, look at it. Like, she knows as soon as she sees the word restoration, she knows what this is. So from here, we jump to the Romanian woods in 1898, and we just have, and it's not the last time we're going to have, from Angel's point of view, running through the woods.
Yep.
Or Angelus being cursed into Angel, I should say.
Yep.
And it keeps jumping back and forth between this running in the woods to someone, this woman cursing him. And then he falls to his knees, and you see like the light in his eyes, and he
has transferred his soul back into him.
And he does not remember immediately. He doesn't know where he is. He doesn't know what's going on. And when you think about it, it's kind of cruel what these people do to him, because Angel the person didn't do all those horrible things. The demon most certainly did. Why you want to torture his soul isn't really fair or just. Like, that's not justice.
But they talked about that it's not justice, it's vengeance.
Yeah.
They specifically said that
but it's not vengeance on him. Like, you might as well just find someone, like random person, and start kicking them. Like, it's the same thing, because the person has nothing to do with what the demon did. So he's telling him, like, and it takes a minute and a half or so, maybe 2 minutes, for him to start feeling or remembering everything Angelus did in his body. And the elder is just standing over him, kind of gloating about what he's about to experience and how he's going to be miserable and whatnot.
Yep. And so then we go back to Sunnydale. This episode's lots of bouncing.
Oh yeah.
And so we go back.
We're little bouncy balls.
And Willow and Buffy have brought this information to Giles at the library. And at the library is Cordelia and Xander sitting as well. And they are describing, this, is it possible? And Giles saying, we thought it was lost, but apparently it's not. And Xander's just like, well, who cares if you can restore his soul or not? And Giles says it would seem it was Jenny's last wish.
Mm-hmm.
And Xander's like, well, she's dead.
Mm-hmm. And Giles is, so where his concern is because Willow says she can do it. She can do this transference. And she has this look on her face of both she's assured and she's hopeful, and she is like, it's like the confidence she got from standing in front of the classroom, really, I think is where this comes from. And Giles is like, once you open this door, you can't close it again. And he is right. And I don't think Willow definitely doesn't fully understand what will happen when she starts messing with these kinds of magics. Would she still have done it? Probably, for her love of Buffy. But she might have hesitated for a second and thought about it just a little bit more. Xander is being awful, and Cordelia backs him up on this. Like, he has his point that, you know, right, the most important thing right now is making sure everyone doesn't go to hell, basically. That is the most important thing. This would take a back burner thing, but they're also completely correct in this might be the easiest way to stop it from happening. You know, it's Xander doesn't look good here. He does not look good here.
I feel like it's a reverse exorcism. Like, if you have a person who's possessed by a demon and they're like, we can either kill the person or we can expel the demon. Xander's just like, kill, kill, kill. And they're like, maybe we could, you know.
It makes sense he ends up with a vengeance demon. It makes sense he ends up with a vengeance demon.
Yeah. But I do feel like Xander has been against Angel from the beginning, not because he's a vampire, not because he's evil, but because he was moving in on his crush Buffy.
And I think part of it is that he's a vampire, because, I mean, he had to take it, he staked one of his very best friends because he was a vampire. So I think part of it might be him trying to deal with the fact that he had to do that, you know. So it's easier for him to say all vampires are bad. They all have to die. Doesn't matter. But I think it's mostly
all men, not all vampires.
Oh.
Sabrina is giving me scoldings right now.
If the only time you're gonna bring up the good ones is when the bad ones are brought up, go in the corner. I don't want to deal with you. But no, I think Xander is the one that could have that reaction and get away with it is Giles. Period. He has suffered the most out of everyone in that, well, Buffy.
But Giles doesn't have that reaction. Exactly. Giles was like, we could restore Angel. And Xander's the one who's like, no, you know, you just want your honey back, instead of saying, like, yes, this could literally, you know, restore soul, save the world, stop the killing. And it doesn't necessarily mean she gets her honey back. She might not take him back. But it does restore a soul and expel the demon and jealous.
Exactly. And now we do see later when Angel is back, Giles has a very different response. But at that point, he's gone through these 2 episodes. And his understanding for the whomever at the time happens to be wearing Angel's face is gone at that moment. But so, you know, Buffy is like, I'm out of here, and walks away, which is probably the best, because Xander isn't going to stop being a jerk. And Willow is not happy with Xander. Giles is not happy with Xander. Very shocked that Cordelia is like agreeing with him, and Xander's shocked about it too. And don't you ever back me up? And I realize that you are right now.
I keep finding myself thinking that Xander is simultaneously very self-aware and then also completely obtuse.
Mhm.
Like, he's like, I realize you are, I'm embarrassed, like, and I'm going to continue with my rant.
Mm-hmm. I think it's that he couldn't deal with his embarrassment. So he's just like, I'm just gonna full steam ahead. Um,
So
so
Angel steals a Cathla, or rather, he steals the obelisk. They open it up. Opens up. Here's a Cathla. He tells a story to Spike about, we didn't just steal a box. We stole a demon inside a box, and we're going to end the world.
and Buffy during all this is out patrolling and bumps into Kendra. Kendra's back.
Yeah.
Yay! I love Kendra.
I love Kendra too. And Kendra is showing a little bit of whimsy here, where she's like, I saw you and I couldn't help myself. I had to spook you.
Yeah, she's got more personality now.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, basically her watcher was like, something big's happening. Go to Sunnydale, and off she goes.
Yep.
Watcherless. I don't understand this because watchers are supposed to watch and take notes. So shouldn't the watcher go with her to take said notes? If she dies, how are they going to know?
He's sending her to a different watcher. They
didn't know that the first time.
Yeah. So he's sending her to a different watcher, and he didn't do the gourd shaking thing that Giles had to do in season 5 when one watcher passes on the guardianship. Shake the gourd, shake the gourd. If anyone's wondering what I'm talking about, this is season 5.
We'll get there.
We'll get there. It's season 5, and the episode is called Intervention. And it involves Giles in a desert with a gourd doing the hokey pokey.
I mean, who doesn't like to go to the desert to shake their gourds?
Yup. Okay, so then we go to 1996, and this is freshman Buffy. Or actually, not yet.
No.
First, we're in New York, and Angel is like eating rats in the sewers, in the streets, and Whistler appears and tells him that, he has to make a choice about if he wants to change. He could do something for good. Takes him to Buffy in LA, and we see Buffy being like
Cordelia.
Being Cordelia, sucking on a lollipop, going, call me, call me, call me, saying that she is so over Trevor, who is going to come crawling on his hands and knees to ask her to a dance.
Yes. And while she's waiting for this to happen, the man who is apparently her first watcher approaches her.
Yep. The Merrick that is not Don Sutherland.
Yeah. He's more like the diabetes man.
Yes, I seriously thought it was Wilford Brimley. Diabetes, but it's not. It's
not diabetes.
It's not diabetes. It's Richard Riley or Rayleigh? Richard. Riehle.
He does not have diabetes.
He does not have diabetes. Well, I mean, he might have diabetes.
And one of the things that Whistler says to Angel is like, that girl, she's gonna have it tough. She's just a kid. And because they watch her on her first night of slaying, she misses the vampire's heart, but gets it the second time. And then she has to go home, and it can't be that late because dinner's in 10 minutes, but Joyce is there, and she's like, where were you? And Buffy said, oh, I was out with Trevor. I'm sorry. I didn't realize it was so late. She said, I'm glad you're safe. Wash up for dinner. It's in 10 minutes. And then Buffy hears her parents fighting about her. Yeah. And Joyce, Buffy's dad is mad that Buffy's mom does not discipline her, and he has to be the bad guy. And I don't think Joyce thinks that this is the biggest deal. Like, she's a teenage girl. She was a little late. Like,
but I mean, at this point, she was 14.
Yeah.
So, like, if your 14-year-old daughter is not coming home after high school, like, until after dark, you might have a little concern.
Like, she's a freshman, though. Like, I don't know. Like, I think
I could barely get out of the house until I went to college. So maybe my views are slightly more skewed than yours. Like, my parents knew where I was at all times. And it was like, I'm going here. I'm going from here to here. I'm going from here to here. And I must check in with you along the way. I remember when I was 18, or it was like right before I turned 18, and I had gotten some like I got in a college rejection. Or actually it wasn't a rejection. I hadn't received a scholarship that I wanted, like that I was hoping for. Mm-hmm. And I said, I'm going for a walk. And my mom's like, you can't leave the house. And I'm like, I am going for a walk. I need to clear my head. And she goes, I'm not going to know where you are. And I'm like, I'm leaving for college in 3 months. You're not going to know where I am anyways. Mm-hmm. Actually, I believe your mom picked me up off the side of the road that day.
Yeah, that seems about right. Yeah, no, the deal was, like, my mother did have to know where I was, and then she had a list of everyone's numbers, like everyone's house numbers, so it was their parents' numbers, and if they had a cell phone, that number was there too. I mean, nowadays, it'd just be your kid has a cell phone, you call and say if you're going somewhere else. But, yeah, like, after school, there would be days where I would just be like, I'm going to the teen center after school. The teen center didn't open for 2 hours after school. I was just going to be walking around town during that time with my friends. That's it. I think I might have had a track phone at that time, maybe. I don't know. My mother had a lot of, like, I never got into any sort of trouble. So she was like, go about. But also she wouldn't let me go into Scranton for fear that I would be kidnapped. So, I mean, it's Clark Summit, fine. Scranton, bad. So, yeah, so they have, back to Buffy, they have this fight, and you can see her face, like, she's really upset about it. And
he decides that he wants to be somebody and help Buffy and be there for her.
Mm-hmm.
And then we go back to Angelus, Angelus killing a human and spreading the blood all over his hand, and then reciting an incantation and trying to pull out the sword and failing.
Mm-hmm. Because what Cathla is a demon that'll suck the world into hell. He's asleep right now because a righteous knight, like, stabbed him with this sword, and he's dormant now and turns to stone, as demons are one to do. So that's what he's trying. He's trying to wake him up, so he'll go, yawn! Everyone's going to hell!
Well, is that reverse yawn? No, it is a yawn. He yawns, and as he yawns,
and everyone goes to hell. Terrible yawn. Which makes me wonder if while everyone's going to hell, because they see someone yawn, if they're all yawning as they go.
What is you're saying that I'm yawning because you're talking about yawning. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so, like, Drusilla's really upset. Like, she's, having one of her episodes where she's, like, stamping her feet and throwing a tantrum. And Angelus is like, it's okay, we're gonna find an old friend. And so the next day, Buffy and Willow and Xander are taking a test. Mm-hmm. And you see Buffy kind of sense something. Like, you see she's taking her test, and she kind of, like, you see this, like, tenseness in her shoulders. And she looks around, and then she's like, oh, nope, test, gotta keep looking down. And then this vampire walks into her. And how does the vampire know what room Buffy is in? Like,
Angel probably knows her schedule, to be quite honest. I also have read that differently always, like her looking up and around, and maybe you might very well be reading it correctly. I thought she was just underprepared for this final, and she's it's not uncommon in movies or in shows when someone's taking a test and they don't know what they're doing to kind of like look up and be like, oh no, great, everyone got this, nobody else is looking at it like it's has three heads. Although you do see Xander as he's there going like because he's not having a good time either.
yeah, I don't know. The way that I just read her shoulders was that she's like taking the test and she's struggling through the test, but she's taking the test, but then she senses something. Yeah. And then this vampire starts immolating herself in front of everyone, saying, you gotta come meet Angelus tonight. Everybody jumps up except for Buffy, who's just sitting there like, this is nothing new to me. Like,
yeah, and she's on
turning into surprised.
And she's turning into flames, as sunlight will do to a vampire, and then goes poof into dust. And again, I guess they're gonna say it's a gas leak.
Yep. So then, the Scoobies are fighting about whether or not they should perform the restoration. And, basically Buffy says, I recognize, to Xander, like, I recognize I might have to kill him, but, this might be the best way is to, like, restore him. Willow is our best hope, our last hope. And Willow's, I don't want to be our last hope. And then Kendra's like, oh, hey, a sword.
Yeah. And Buffy also says, like, there's no guarantee either that I won't fail.
Yep.
And if I fall, the world can't go to hell, literally. Yep. So we need Willow to do this, because Buffy was also on the fence about how she really felt about all of it. Like, she wanted, like, this, but, like, she was also wrestling with it because of everything that's happened.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really unfair of what Xander said for a lot of reasons, but that was one of them. And so, but Buffy also says, she's going to go alone.
With Kendra.
Kendra should stay just in case it's a trap, which is smart, and proves what Angel had said about Buffy never learning isn't true. She did learn. She did leave a backup plan. It just doesn't go well at all.
So Kendra gives Buffy Mr. Pointy. Now, Mr. Pointy does show up throughout the rest of the seasons as her security blanket steak. And
Mr. Pointy is Kendra's favorite steak. It's her lucky steak.
It's her lucky steak. She named him. It's called Mr. Pointy.
She doesn't have any dolls because her watcher is an evil, evil person.
Well, I don't have any dolls. I don't like dolls.
Well, when you were a child, you had toys.
She didn't get stuffed animals. She just had a steak. And so Willow says it'll take about half an hour to perform the ritual. So, like, fight to delay Angelus. And so they start fighting, and Angelus basically says again, like, this was never about you. You never learn. And she's like, oh, crap, it really was, a trap. And so she runs back. As she's running back, everybody is being attacked. Xander is hit first. Then Giles, Cordelia books it out of there. Willow hides behind a bookcase, and then the bookcase knocks over, and she's knocked unconscious.
Which, again, these damn bookcases
need to be locked
down. It's California. There are earthquakes, and these things have been knocked over before. Giles, bolt them down. Like, you can.
Why is Snyder not on this as the administrator of the school, saying this is a safety hazard?
We're gonna get sued. That seems like something Snyder would care about, being sued. And so Willow is knocked out. I also want to know how heavy these bookcases are, but
well, I mean, they are filled with books.
They are. But, like, if a couple of books hit you in the head, That'll hurt, but it's not going to put you in a coma. If they had hit her going this way, I would buy it more because that would be a lot more weight.
I mean, I don't entirely crushed by the bookcase with all the books, 2 sides of books.
But it still shouldn't put her in a coma. Knock her out, I'll buy that. The coma.
And then
anyway.
Zilla hypnotizes Kendra. Now,
well, she actually comes in and she just wants to fight Kendra. She goes, enough, and goes with her fingers, which is
beautiful manicure.
She just looks so badass too. Like, that is just such a beautiful moment of her being like, And I was like, if I am ever in a fight, I want to look like that.
Yep. Her hair and her coat and her manicure. I literally painted my nails today because I was looking at her painted nails thinking, I don't have pretty nails like that. I should paint mine so that I look more feminine.
But also, if you look when she goes like this, she has short nails. Like right there. Her nails are shorter.
Are they?
They are. When she's going like this, they're probably about as long as mine, right? And which is like barely longer than my fingertip. When we cut to her later, they're longer and they're cut. When she's going like this, they're short.
I didn't think they were. I thought it was because she had white tips on them. They didn't look as large because you could only see the dark red parts.
I think that they're also
I was
stilettoed.
I was focusing on them and I was like, ooh, that is very pretty nail work. So
we'll have to go back and look. But it's always bothered me because even if that they're not sharpened like they are when they slice Kendra.
Right after this episode, I'm going to look at that scene again. You should too. Mm-hmm. And then we need to put like a little bubble right here for the podcast, or for
the one person who watches this on YouTube versus
one person who watches this on YouTube, or maybe with a little voiceover. Sabrina was right, or Jasmine was right.
She actually has no nails at all in this. We don't know what happened.
But I was really disappointed with how easily she hypnotized Kendra.
Yeah.
And then, so she slits Kendra's carotid arteries, like just, scratches her and slits her carotid arteries, and Kendra falls to the ground. Mm-hmm. I have issues.
Oh, yeah. It's very problematic.
Medical issues. First of all, it takes 12 seconds after you stop getting blood to your brain before you lose consciousness. That is if you have a direct, complete cut. If there was any blood, Kendra immediately puts her hand to her neck. Mm-hmm. She is staunching the flow of blood, so she still should be getting some to her brain. It takes 4 to 7 minutes of loss of blood, brain, whatever, before it becomes an actual issue. You have 2 carotid arteries and 1 jugular vein. She didn't cut the jugular, she hit the carotid. Mm-hmm. She should still be getting blood to her brain. She should still be alive.
Yeah, there wasn't a very long cut, and it wasn't a very deep cut. Mm-hmm. It was, I feel like a cat might actually cut you deeper. Like your household cat.
You're like, I feel like my cat has cut me deeper.
Yeah. Thankfully, not on my jugular, but or carotid artery. But
and then, like, where do vampires bite you? Are they biting in your carotid? Are they biting in your jugular? Where are they biting? You can survive a vampire bite. You can survive 1 slash.
Mm-hmm. Some people do survive vampire bites. Buffy being one of them.
Mm-hmm. I mean, other people do, but Buffy scares them away.
Yep. I mean, most of the Scoobies at some point get bitten, I think.
Gage in Go Fish was bitten by Angelus and ran away, and he was okay. I mean, he was also part, gill monster, but he survived. So Buffy runs back and she finds her friend, her fellow Slayer, dead on the ground.
Well, I'm just going to back up for a second. While she's running, one, that coat is fabulous. And two, Whistler is talking again to us. And he says, like, you're never ready for those big moments, even when you see them coming. You're never prepared for them. And it's so true, because anyone who's lived probably into their 30s, I would say, like, you've had some major things happen at that point, but you're never quite ready for those big things, even when you see them coming. And because Buffy knows she's walking in on absolute destruction, most likely. She probably has hope because Kendra's there, but as soon as she sees Kendra, and they've also dragged off Giles. That's what they came for. They took Giles. Everybody else is left in shambles except for Cordelia, who ran away. But she gets there, and the first thing she sees is her friend dead on the floor.
Yep. And then the police arrive behind her and point a gun and tell her to freeze. And this is the end of part of Becoming.
Yep, because Joss Whedon
is mean.
He's very, very mean. Excellent writer. You know you're tuning in next week, but mean.
So immediately, we're just going to go right into it. Cut through it. 2 police officers are grabbing Buffy. She's telling them, like, check on the friends, check on the friends. Snyder arrives with more cops, and he's like, whatever the problem is, she did it.
And they immediately go to arrest. Like, that's not how that would work. One, she doesn't have any blood on her. She's clearly upset that her friend's dead and wants them. They would, because they don't want to alert someone that they're a suspect.
Yeah.
They probably don't have enough evidence even to say, other than that she was there, but she's not covered in blood. Like, so, and she has no weapon either. So there's all of that. So there's no way that they would have booked her on that, especially since she's a white woman.
I mean, they did recently go after her for Ted. So,
but Ted turned out to be a murderer.
I know, but like,
she was cleared on that as well.
So Buffy hits the officer that's holding her and runs away and is now a fugitive of the law. And so she puts on her little, like, cap and goes to the hospital, and she finds Xander, and Xander, gives her a hug to hide her from the cops.
Yes.
And she tries to make a joke about it. That was equal parts protecting me and copping a feel, right? And then she sees his face, and he tells her that Willow has been seriously hurt.
Mm-hmm. He doesn't, like, we don't even hear that part. It just flashes to Willow.
Yep.
And they do a really good job of making Allison Hannigan look like she's going to die. Upset the audience. Because Willow.
Yep. Also, hospital rooms are freaking cold, and so I wouldn't be surprised if she's just looking all pale and sad and cold.
Like, little blue. And at the, like, Buffy asks, like, where are her parents? And they're in Phoenix visiting family. The Rosenbergs. Great parents. And then, where did you call Oz? Xander has completely forgotten to call Oz. Because he likes to forget that Oz exists. So he goes off to call him. And Cordy also gets there about this time. And this is when they find out, because she just kept running. She's like, I think I got 3 counties away before I realized no one was chasing me. And Buffy's like, oh, was Giles with you? And she was like, no, Giles didn't get out. Mm-hmm. And that's when they finally realize Giles is missing.
Yep. And of course, Angelus then wakes up Giles and announces that, hey, we're going to have a good old torture sesh. Like, I want you to tell me how to wake up a Cathla, but I'm hoping you don't do it right away. I hope I get to have fun first.
And then we pop over to the cops are at Buffy's house, and Joyce is just like, Buffy wouldn't do this. She's at her friend Willow's house. And it's like Willow Rosenberg, the second victim. And you can see like Joyce is like, what? And like the cops really, Joyce kind of quickly at that point assumes that Buffy has done something. Like you might not know that by her reaction here, but what she says to Buffy later confirms that.
Yeah.
So then Buffy goes to Giles's house to see if Giles is there, and she runs into Whistler, who is just, up in Giles's bedroom trying on his tweed, I guess. And I mean, Whistler's not the smartest to sneak up he doesn't sneak, he announces himself, but her missing watcher, the Slayer, annoying her, not a good thing. And he's just like, everyone thought today was going to be Angel's Day, but we didn't see you coming. And he's being very cryptic, which also is just pissing Buffy off because Watcher missing, world about to end, direct answers.
As she's leaving, he yells after her that the sword is not enough, that the blessed sword is not enough. She has to know how to use it. And so she's walking down the street, and a police officer recognizes her, tries to arrest her, and Spike shows up. Spike, who was standing. Now, we got the preview 2 episodes back at the end of the scene, but this is the first.
We saw him standing and pacing, or in Becoming Part 1, and Drusilla almost catches him.
Oh, I missed that part.
Yeah, he's standing and pacing because he's annoyed with Angel and the whole situation, and she nearly catches him, and he like hops back in his chair real quick, and she's like,
Spike.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he says, hello, cutie, in his, gorgeous voice, and
Buffy's confused.
Yeah, and like, I don't want to love Spike. I don't want to love Spike. But whenever he gives a line like that, there's this part of my heart that just goes patter, pitter patter. Oh, yes, please. You bad boy.
And so I love that, because Buffy's immediately like, we're gonna fight now, and he's like, whoa, no, and she's like, we're mortal enemies. What don't you get about this? And he was just like, I don't know if you noticed this or not, but I'm kind of helping you out here. And he said, like, I want things to go back to how they were before, with just me and Drew. That's all I want. And she was like, this still doesn't really make sense. And he says, vampires talk a big game. This whole thing of like wanting to end the world, it's basically locker room talk. Tough guy talk is what he calls it. And he gets starts smoking a cigarette from this cop. Again, no breathing, but whatever. I guess you could force your lungs to work. Yeah. And he's like, you are all Happy Meals walking around on 2 legs. Why would I want this world to end? Yep. I love it here. And Buffy's like, I'm not trying to help you just because your girlfriend's a big hoe.
Yep. I want to go back to the idea of like, I like this world. I really do feel like William came into his own when he became Spike. The chains of civilization, the chains of expectations that he was trying to adhere to as a human are gone. And he loves this new world that he's in. He has found his place. Yep. And he relishes in it. And
he likes the telly. He likes the technology. He's loving the world. And I mean, we've talked about that throughout all this since Spike came about. Like, he is living his best afterlife, basically.
Yes.
He loves it. And then he also says, like, also, Angel has your watcher, and if you want your watcher, you kind of need me. The deal is me and Drew get to walk free. And they talk about that a little bit later on, because that's kind of a sticking point. Because Drusilla just killed Kendra, and somehow Buffy knows it was Drew.
And then basically Spike's like, look, I've got like, I'm all you've got.
Mhm.
And he says, like, you know, neither one of us can defeat both Angelus and Drusilla at the same time, so we need to work together. Like, this is just where we're at. And she says, okay, agrees to a ceasefire. They're walking inside her house. She's like, let's get
Oh
off.
wait, before this happens, we pop over.
Let me just kill this guy.
Oh yeah, the let me just kill this guy thing.
He's
Yeah.
like, okay, hang on, let me just kill this guy. And she's like, no. And he's like, oh, right.
She just gives him that look with her eyebrows, and he's like, oh yeah, gotcha. But then we hop over before they get to Buffy's house. Xander and Cordelia are back at the hospital, and Cordelia is like goes to get coffee, and Xander starts talking to Willow, who is still unconscious, saying, you know, you're my best friend. I talk to you every night. Like, who am I going to do all this stuff with? You can't leave. Like, I love you.
Mm-hmm.
And Willow starts moving about, like her hand, and then she says Oz's name. And that's right when Oz gets there. And it's such a beautiful moment. But Xander's kind of like, oh, yeah, let me get the doctors. And Oz is like holding her hand, and
she says
Ginger love
is big. And then she asks him if her head is big. And he says, no, it's head size. And then he gives her a little smooch.
And then she opens her eyes. Their love is so pure. I love them. So,
high school love. Such great, healthy high school love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this is when we see like this is when we really see the first drops of problematicness that Xander is going to be for that relationship. I mean, you get hints kind of before, but this is like, he doesn't call Oz. He, you know, is being weird. Like, it's all weird. Like, telling your best friend that you love them is not, telling a friend you love them is not weird. The way he does it. Like, we know he's not best friend love. He's also talking romantic love.
Yeah, which he has been rejecting for oh so long.
Mm-hmm.
Then he's like, no, I want Cordelia. And then now he's like, oh, and now I also want. He's just very confused because he has feelings for all the women in his life. Like,
he's like, I never thought I'd get to choose.
Okay, so then we get Buffy and Spike trying to go inside. They meet up with Joyce. Spike is like, she doesn't know. And Buffy's like, we're in a band. I play the drums. And she's like, to Spike, like, what do you do? And he's like, well, I sing. Which, because James Marsters actually is a singer.
Ghost of a robot. And then they're going to go inside to talk about it, and a vamp comes out, and Spike and Buffy work really well together to, like, just slay that guy.
Yep.
But again, they just slay that guy right in front of Joyce. And now it's just like, so about that.
Yep.
I'm the Slayer, Mom.
I'm a vampire slayer.
And in between all of this, too, we do pan back to Giles at the mansion, and Angel, we see he's bound to a chair. He has blood running off of his hands. And again, Angel is sitting, and it's that moment cleaning Giles's glasses. Someone's always cleaning his glasses but last time it was Giles cleaning his glasses as he was kicking the crap out of Ethan.
Ethan Rain.
Yeah, but now it's the shoes on the other foot, and it's not so fun for Giles or us.
Yeah.
But Giles hasn't cracked. He's not going to. He tells Angel he has to do the ritual in a tutu. And he's just like, brr. So then we jump back to Buffy's house. Buffy is on the phone with Willow in the kitchen. And Joyce and Spike are sitting in a very awkward silence in the living room. Just like, Joyce is like trying to think of something to say. And Spike is just like actively looking around the room.
Like, looking at the decor.
Mm-hmm.
And then Joyce says, have we met before? And he's like, yeah, you hit me over the head with an axe. Jinx, get away from my daughter.
Yep. And she was like, oh,
Yep. And I mean, she seems to be taking it well. Like, she seems to be accepting it, but you can see that she's struggling to come to terms with this.
And she's not going to be taking it well for very much longer.
No.
So she gets off the phone, says that Willow, is better. She's conscious. And again, Spike and Buffy are going back and forth about the whole Drusilla sticking point, because Drusilla did kill her friend, and Spike is proud.
Yeah.
Good for her. She didn't tell me. And then he's like, oh, yeah, I guess not so good from your perspective.
Mm-hmm. And Buffy's like, okay, fine. However, Drew only gets to walk if Giles is alive. So you best get back and make sure my watcher is alive, because if Giles dies, so does Drew.
And also, he promises she will never see them again. He hopes to God, he says. Yeah. And we know, thankfully for all of us, that is not the case.
Yep. And then Joyce has the "my daughter is gay" meltdown, except it's the "my daughter is a slayer" meltdown.
Yeah, she's no longer handling it well. She says, oh, we'll just call the police because you have proof. And she's like, we have my word. That's not proof. You can't call the police. Also, what do you mean you thought I was guilty? And she was just like, well, the police can go handle this. And she's like, the police will get killed. They can't handle this. And her mother's just like, this is ridiculous. Like, I am your mother. Like, you're going to listen to me.
Well, but one of the other things she says first is, have you tried not being a
Slayer?
And, like, are you sure you're the Slayer? Have you tried? And again, I pretty much word for word can put this as like the mother rejecting their queer child. Mm-hmm. Have you tried not being gay? Are you sure you're gay? This isn't just a phase, like, except it's Slayer instead of a child who did not come out to her, but was outed.
Yeah.
Buffy was outed as the Slayer instead of being able to come out on her own terms in a safe environment. And
it also, Buffy points out, all the signs were there. Like, how many times did you have to wash blood out of my clothes?
Yep.
Like, that wasn't my, like.
And again, which is just like a child having to come out or being outed to their parent, being like, you never noticed the gay porn? Like, you never noticed how all those pretty boobies were like on the posters on my wall?
Right? That I had no interest in members of the opposite sex? Like, that never occurred to you?
No. So, yeah. And I have to say, like, when I was watching these episodes was when I was questioning my own sexuality as a teenager. And so this scene where it feels like her mother is rejecting her for her identity was really emotional for me. And I still find it really emotional because I didn't have the best coming out scenario. And it took me a long time to like come to grips with that, because I was also told, don't come back. Like, you need to leave and not come back. And so, but I mean, that happened a couple of years later, but like, I was dealing with those issues at the time. And so this definitely, seeing these scenes, it hit home. It hit home hard.
And it's not that, so Buffy's mother doesn't tell her she has to leave. Her mother tells her the opposite. She's not allowed to leave.
And then she says, you walk out that door, don't you dare
come back. Which I imagine a lot of parents have said that and then immediately regret it, just like Joy. Like, you can see it on her face. Because Buffy has no choice. She could stay, and then the world could end, and her mom could go to hell with everybody else. And while we all might tell our parents at some point, at least in our heads, you can go to hell, generally, we don't want them sucked into a demon yawn to hell.
Yep.
So she leaves, and Joyce will regret that for like that choice of words for years. Because even once Buffy comes back, she clearly still regrets it.
Yep.
Um, their relationship's never quite the same. Um,
So
so,
we go back to the hospital,
mhm.
and Willow has her resolve face on, and she's like, I want to try the curse again. And Oz is very confused, and she's like, Oz, you go with Cordelia, get my supplies. Cordelia, fill them in along the way. Xander, tell Buffy we're doing this plan. Tell her to just stall until we can complete the curse.
And this is how we know Willow has had a brain injury, because this is a poor decision. Xander's not the one that you send to give the we're going to try to save Angel soul message. You
Yep.
send Cordelia for that.
Yep. Or
No, I think they need Oz for that, especially since Oz has no idea what's going on.
yeah.
So, yeah, so she sends off Xander, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people at home at that point were like, I don't know if that's a good decision.
Yep.
I don't know. Maybe some people have faith in him. It's misplaced in this case, if it is, if they do. So, they go off, and then we pan back to Giles and Angel.
Mm-hmm.
And he's getting really pissed at Giles. And at this point, he said he's just going to get the chainsaw. And Spike is back in his wheelchair, and he's like, hey, you can't do that. We need him in one piece. Like, you need to get the information from him. And there's other ways to do it. And he calls in Drusilla.
Uh-huh.
And she comes in, and she's like, like, all like, yes, pet?
Yep. And he says, do you want to play a game? And she does. She does want to play a game.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's like, sweetheart, like, come here. And, so then Buffy's in the library getting the sword, and she runs into Snyder, who expels her. Mm-hmm. And he knows that she's not the murderer, but it doesn't matter.
And he acknowledges it and says that Sunnydale police are stupid.
Yep, he's like, they are deeply stupid. And then he calls and says he wants to give the mayor the good news.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're like, okay, the mayor knows about Buffy. This is going to mean something later.
Yeah, like, and so clearly the mayor's not a good guy if he wants Buffy expelled.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Back to
Drusilla. And she is doing the hypnotize thing again with the bee in my eyes. And Giles is too weak to fight. Like, he's too weak at this point to, like, if he wanted to try and fight her off. And at first, she's nice to him and gives him, like, some water, and then puts her hand on his head and, like, reads his mind. And he's like, oh, and she goes, oh, of course. And she turns herself in his mind to Jenny.
Tells him to see with his heart.
Mm-hmm.
And so he sees Jenny. And, it's tragic. It's tragic because he wants to be with Jenny so badly. Mm-hmm. And he keeps saying we have to get Angelus away from Acathala. She's like, why? And he's close? Is he close? We have to get Angelus away from Acathala. Poor Buffy. Poor Giles. But
and he does kind of spill the beans. Like, he gives enough information that they figure it out, that it's his blood is the key. And because, like, Angel and Spike are still in the room. They're just standing back as Drusilla does her thing. And then Drusilla starts, like, viciously making out with Giles as Spike and Angel are talking about this whole thing. And then they're like, Drew. And she's like, huh?
Sorry, she got caught in the moment. She was enjoying a good makeout. And if I had the chance to make out with Anthony Stewart Head, I would probably enjoy it too.
I see him as too much of a father figure like that. Sorry, Anthony Stewart Head. That would be weird.
Make out with pretty much anybody in the Buffy cast. I would be in the moment too.
The guy with the horns and the slime.
Yeah, sure, why not? I just grab onto those antlers.
You'd have to really wash your hands afterwards. But yeah, so Angel's giddy now, and he's like, okay, we can kill him. And Spike's like, no, what if it doesn't go right? And he's like, oh, you're always thinking. I'm so glad we're on the same team again.
Yep.
And Spike's just like, mm-hmm. And we're all like, mm-hmm.
And so, okay, and again, this is the part where I'm just like, Buffy is like, we see her and she is wearing the cross, the crucifix. Is it no, I think it's just a cross. The cross that Angel gave her.
Mm-hmm.
And earlier she was looking at, the clotter ring that he had given her. Like, she is really looking at these gifts and almost wearing them like an armor as she's getting ready to kill Angel.
Yeah.
And she returns to Whistler and asks him how to defeat Ahathla. And he tells her that Angelus's blood would send both evil beings back to hell. Like, you have to use the bloody sword through Angel into Ahathla in order to stop it.
It opens and closes the yawning demon.
And he says that the quicker she kills Angel, the easier it'll be. And she says, no problem, I've already lost everything. And he says, kind of voiced over, like, no, you have one last thing to lose.
Yeah, she is left, like, one last thing. And so she was waiting until sun up, kind of, like that had been the plan, to wait until sun up to go. And so she's walking there, and
meets Xander.
And he has a rock. He's a scared guy with a rock as her backup.
She gives him a stick.
Yeah, and he says,
not Mr. Pointy.
And he says, Willow said to kick Angel's ass.
Yep.
Not giving the message.
Yep.
Urgh. So
again, this is Xander making decisions for Buffy.
Yep.
Making decisions for other people. Instead of allowing other people to make those decisions with information for themselves, he kind of tries to force them into doing what he wants. He tries to exert his power over the people, and I hate it. Like, I didn't hate it the first several times watching it when I was younger, but as an adult, I'm like, this behavior is not okay. It is manipulative. It is wrong. And so I've really started to have problems with it. Like, yeah. His like, I understand he's looking at it at this point and he's like, no, just have her kill him. Like, but he should have at least told her that, Willow was trying this again. Like, yeah, because Buffy knows that, like, if Ahathla wakes up, she has to put Ahathla down again. But she could have tried harder, or would have tried harder, to stop him from pulling that sword out to begin with.
Yeah. Yeah, because unfortunately, the second he touches that sword and pulls it out, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who he is anymore. He has to die. So, so
she tells Xander, you go in there, you free Giles, and get out. Like, I'm going to be doing a whole bunch of killing. You got to get out with Giles.
So they go in, and that's exactly. He goes for Giles. She starts fighting everyone, but Angel's like, "You think you're really going to be able to take all of us on by yourself?" And that's when Spike gets up and just starts beating him with a poker, and it's a great moment for everyone. And Drusilla is just like, oh, and then she tackles like this great dramatic tackle.
You hear her like upset in the background, like, no, like, she's like having a little like freak out, and then she launches herself at Spike.
And I'm going to just jump back to Xander going to free Giles, because this is a great moment, because he goes And Giles is like, no, you're just trying to tell me what I want to see again. And Giles and Xander goes, then why would they have me here? And he's like, oh, you're right. Yeah, let's go. So finally, the fact that Giles doesn't like Xander that much has paid off.
Mm-hmm.
This is why it's important that Xander is there, because Willow couldn't go, but okay, I guess Cordelia could be there because he wouldn't have wanted to really see her either. But like Oz, he would have been like, great, yeah, oh, you're here to torture me more. But so Xander gets Giles out of there, and while Buffy and Spike are fighting everyone.
Yep. So Buffy has now slain everyone who there is to slay. Spike is strangling Drusilla. He is not choking her, he is strangling her. And this is the difference.
It's a chokehold, what he is doing.
It's actually a stranglehold.
Is it?
They call it a chokehold, but it's a stranglehold because what it is doing, again, is exerting pressure on the carotid arteries. Mm-hmm. So when you do this, when you're specifically, and it's called triangle hold, you are stopping blood flow from reaching the brain.
You're knocking the person out. That is the goal of that. You want them unconscious or you want to kill them.
But it's not because they can't breathe.
No.
It's because they're not getting blood to their brain. And I think that's the only reason why it's able to knock a vampire unconscious. Is because
but there's not blood pumping. Their hearts aren't pumping anything.
I feel like maybe there's mystical pumping, because otherwise, how do they get erections?
Maybe they're always erect.
Like,
when you die, you pop a chubby, and it just stays that way. They have to wear special apparatuses.
Like, I think that like the mystical, paranormal way that this works is that they need to have fresh blood in their system, but that it does flow through their system.
So you're not even going to touch they always have a boner.
Do I want to touch a vampire's constant boner? No.
My forever boner.
Do I want to touch the forever boner?
Angel's had a boner for 200 years.
And then I've got to wonder about seminal fluids. And
well, we know there's no semen.
No, we know there's no sperm. Yeah. We don't know if there's no semen.
Ew, what if it was blood? Moving on.
Let's take a moment. Think about it. We're thinking about it. And
we're letting the thought go. So now Angel and Buffy are fighting, and they both have their swords, and they're like, ching, 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 and Drusilla is now out, and so Spike picks up Drusilla. At this point, it looks like Angel has bested Buffy, and Spike goes, oh God, he's gonna kill her. Yeah, well, walks away with Drusilla.
Yep. Because he's still evil. He got what he wanted. This was Drusilla.
But they're still going to hell. Like, his Happy Meals are going away. Yep. But Spike also doesn't know how to close the portal, so so they're gone. He pops her into the car, which has all the spray paint on the windshield, and drives away, and he's very weird with the whole thing. But
he pulls Drew over for a snuggle while he's driving away.
Is unconscious
and jealous, approaches Buffy, and he says, "You're all alone, no weapons, no friends. What's left?" And as he swings the sword, she grabs it in between, eyes closed, grabs it in between her palms and says, "Me." And we see Slayer Buffy at her core. She is fighting ready. Because in the end, all she has left is herself.
Yep.
And
to save the world.
But at the same time, Willow is performing the restoration spell, and she falls into a trance, and then she starts reciting perfect Romanian, without any help or translations.
And I think it's Cordelia who's like, "Is this good?" Like, is this supposed to be happening?
Speak English, please.
Yeah. And because it's Spike, it's Cordelia and Oz there. And I mean, Oz is clearly like concerned.
Yep.
Because that's his honey bunny. But so they're still fighting, and Buffy knocks the sword out, and she's about to like do the stabby on him.
And he wakes up.
And Willow finishes. We see the orb, which Giles had been using as a paperweight, light up, and then we see Angel's eyes light up. His soul is back, and it's the same thing as when he was in the Romanian woods. He looks up and he sees her and goes, Buffy? Because the last memories he had were of her.
Yep.
And he has no idea what's happened, and she's not sure if this is a play. Like,
did see his eyes glow, but
like she's a little like, but then she realized it is Angel. It is Angel, and he's like, "You're hurt," not knowing that he's the one that stabbed her. And it's rough because he's already pulled out that sword.
Yep, it was the only way it could make it worse. Like. She's not killing Angelus anymore. Now she has to kill Angel.
Hear that? Crazy Romanians in the woods? Like, not justice.
No, it's so painful, and it's heart-wrenching. And she tells him, like, close your eyes. It's fine. He's like, what's happening? She's like, it doesn't matter. Close your eyes. And she kisses him. And then she stabs him through the heart into a Cathla.
So they both say, I love you first.
Yes, they say that they love each other. Oh. And then he's betrayed. He's
confused.
He's confused, betrayed. And he like holds his hand out to her and he's like, Buffy? And she just watches as he gets sucked into a Cathla's hell dimension.
Yeah.
And she's lost everything.
Yeah.
And then Sarah McLachlan starts playing.
Because it's the 90s, and I mean, there's no kittens in cages, but dang, emotionally, we're all in a cage.
Yeah. And so we get a bunch of scenes all together. We see Joyce finds a note on Buffy's bed. Mm-hmm. We don't get to read it, but we see it and we see her face.
And we can see all of Buffy's on, like from her closet.
Yep, it's strewn about. Closet's empty. The Scoobies, which is now Oz, Cordelia, Xander, Giles, and Willow. Willow's still in a wheelchair. Mm-hmm. Gather in front of the school, and they're like, "Well, she has to come back because there's still school." So the world all ended, but they're like, "There's still school. She has to come back for school." But of course, she's watching them, and then she walks away and boards a bus and leaves Sunnydale.
Yep.
All while Sarah McLachlan is playing in the background.
Leaving Sunnydale, come back soon.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where season 2 ends. So we all were emotionally abused during this past episode. Yeah. Thankfully, so when I started watching Buffy, I started watching in season 3. So I knew some things. But even still, like when I finally got to watch seasons 1 and 2, and I think I got to watch them in their entirety with you in order. Whew. Like that was still rough.
Oh, season 3 is my favorite, though.
It is my favorite. My favorite episode is in that, which happens to actually be the episode that I first watched. Because I thought it was Buffy the movie. But we'll get there. All right, everyone. Do whatever you need to like self-care after that episode. Take a bath.
Facial. Maybe give yourself a manicure. If you would like to try the Drusilla manicure, that might be fun.
Hug a stuffed animal. Find a Mr. Gordo. Make yourself a steak. Call it Mr. Pointy. Whatever works for you. No one's here to judge. And we will be back in the Hellmouth next week.
Now, next week, I think we're doing a mini episode.
Yes, we're going to do a mini episode where we talk about, because a lot of stuff has happened between seasons 1 and 2. And we're just gonna talk about that and how characters have progressed and some of the highs and lows, and it's just gonna be a fun little thing. We hope.
We hope. Great. We'll see you next time, guys.
Thank you for Just Jossin.
Thank you for Just Jossin.